What's up, y'all? It's your boy JTMM, aka JustTenMoreMinutes, aka the Freakin' 10, back again with more videos from Sabaton history. This one is Lion in the North, which we watched yesterday, which I thought was a really, really good song. The history I'm really inclined to hear about because, you know, going over all of this history, right? And I jump around for a reason. And I know a lot of people want me to go in certain orders as maybe the band wanted me to or intended. But it's just not how my brain works. I like to skip around and really kind of just cover songs. What intrigues me, title, what intrigues me, you know, from maybe a graphic on there. So that's really how I choose these. It's a gut feeling. So I'm going to continue to do that, and that may irritate some people, but sorry, it's my channel and I do what I'm comfortable with. So just the way it is. This one I'm really, you know, interested to see the history leading up to him taking over, and I'm hoping that's what this is about. So with that being said, let's check it out.
Hej, jag heter Gustavus Adolphus den andra.
And I'm Joachim from Sabaton.
Because we've been lying to them for the last year and a half.
Yeah, apparently.
Yep, lying. We've been lying to you. And in fact, all the history we've been doing, it's not even real history, actually. Wait, Chris, come here. Chris, come here. Chris, can you do the interview about this one? You want to do the interview? Wait, Joachim, you got a lunch meeting anyway.
So, yeah, I got a lunch meeting.
Okay,
you want to take over?
Well, Chris, you sit down and okay?
Yeah.
All right, Joachim, great to see you again, buddy. All right, cool, yeah. This is Sabaton history.
These freaking clowns. You can't help but love them, though.
A time of religion and war, legends tell the tale of a lion. This beast in the shape of a man with a dream to rule sea and land.
Famous physician and alchemist Paracelsus made a prophecy towards the end of his life in the mid-1500s that one day a lion of midnight would arise. He would go out to fight the eagle from the south and defeat the enemies of Christ and their agents of destruction. The lion would then win the eagle's scepter and usher in an era of peace in Europe. And soon after his victory, the world would cease to exist. By the time the Swedish king Charles IX, Karl IX, died in 1611, the 16-year-old heir, Gustavus Adolphus, could not have been further away from fulfilling such a prophecy. His father had left him a legacy of 3 ongoing wars and the smoldering embers of a civil war, which had sent the Catholic line of the royal family into exile. To add insult to injury, although the Swedish Riksdag declared Gustav fit to rule despite his age, he was only allowed control of the government if his reign was accompanied by a strong chancellor. So the nobleman Axel Oxenstierna was chosen to assist the young king. What could have easily been problematic proved to be the perfect partnership. Gustav Adolf showed all the signs of a gifted leader early on. His charisma was infectious, and he easily won over the Swedish people from the highest nobleman to the lowest servant. It was his dreams of greatness and seemingly endless ambition that inspired the people to follow him. Oxenstierna, on the other hand, was the born administrator and bureaucrat who preferred attending to matters of the state from the depths of his personal library. Together, the two overcame years of civil strife to reform the nation and modernize the military.
You know, I just have to stop it there because that's an interesting dynamic there with, you know, obviously, I don't know that any of us could imagine a 16-year-old taking over any country in today's landscape without having some type of strong support system behind them. I mean, wow. Now, obviously, they made a great pair. And it's one of those things where you can't help but realize, I mean, that's unfortunately where a lot of kings, a lot of presidents fail, is they don't surround themselves with the right people, right? You know, if you look at anybody that's been successful, they had a strong core group that they could rely on in order to get things done. Now, whether you agree with policy or not, that's out. Take that part out. But having a core and having, this person that's there that can help kind of guide them to learning things and getting things done, obviously then builds that confidence and then allows you to, start thinking on your own in this instance, and this pair worked perfectly. I think that's cool. I think that's really smart. Wow, what a cool little and I know that's weird that I'm like amazed by that, but that's just it's brilliant. It's one of those where the stars aligned and you get people that work together really, really well.
While Gustav Adolf learned military matters, Oxenstierna talked business with the Swedish aristocracy. The two sought to open Sweden to the world. Sweden's handicap of being situated on the periphery of Europe with only limited natural resources was hardly the basis for an empire. But with international trade came international credit, and with credit came the ability to pay for an army. Sweden had virtually no allies and was seen by the European aristocrats as an upstart, backwards country full of unknown wilderness and barbarians. But there was a need to counter both Polish and Danish threats to his rule, and Gustav wanted to continue what his father had begun and create a Protestant Swedish empire on the shores of the Baltic Sea. Fast forward some years. When the 30 Years' War was a third of its way through, the Catholic imperial forces of the Habsburg Emperor were rapidly advancing into northern Germany. Denmark's intervention in the confessional conflict as the champion of Protestantism was rather short-lived, and the Danes' defeat in 1629 ended their status as a real power. Gustav Adolf, who had spent the last few years fighting a tough war in Poland, was at first delighted by the defeat of his Scandinavian rival, but tensions grew with Catholic armies now at all the edges of his newly emerging empire. His family, the Vasa dynasty, had made political connections with the German royal families in the north, and Gustav Adolf himself had married the Protestant Princess of Brandenburg. But fears of a Catholic Habsburg-Polish alliance directed against Gustav Adolf's throne became more pressing. When the besieged city of Stralsund asked the Swedes for help, Gustav Adolf felt like he had no real choice but to get involved. And the 30 Years' War then grew into a battle between the lion from the north and the eagle from the south. The decision to get involved in the German conflict was nothing but a gamble. Sweden had only recently conquered major cities and territories along the Baltic coast and was running out of money. Oxenstierna calculated they would need an army of at least 75,000 men to take and hold the north of the Germanic states. But in late 1630, they could only muster around 30,000. So although this was more than Gustav had ever led in Poland, he would need all of his military skills to be successful. The overwhelming Swedish victory in the Battle of Weitenfeld in 1631, though, changed the image of the Swedes overnight. Gustav Adolf rose from unknown king to European sensation. The Protestants hailed him as their savior, as the new Alexander, the lion from the north, the golden king. As quickly as possible, he led his army south, capturing wealthy German cities on the way until he stood before the Rhine. As he entered Frankfurt, where traditionally Germanic kings and emperors went for their coronation, the people of Europe began to speculate about the real size of Gustav Adolf's ambitions, even as the size of his army grew and grew. See, back when he was crowned as Gustav den Andre Adolf, he had entered the coronation ceremony in a symbolic manner. He was dressed as a Goth. And no, I don't mean someone in a black leather coat and tons of mascara. I mean, like badass Goths from ancient times who went out to sack Rome. Would he now make this a reality and march on the capital of Christendom?
Wow. This is fascinating to me with the detail because I wasn't, I mean, I was picturing it more of, wow. This one's interesting to me because, I mean, truly, I'm almost speechless just because of what he was able to accomplish in such a short period of time. And I realized, no, I mean, we're not talking, 2 years, but just the ability to turn things around as quickly as he did, to then march on and march into different places. Wow. Do you think it was, I mean, do you think that he truly felt it was necessary, or is it one of those of avenging his father and then wanting to go further? And maybe avenging his father is the wrong way. I mean, I mean, I'm only 6 minutes into the 20, but I almost want to hear more details on this stuff. We'll see what goes on, but this is this is probably one of the most fascinating pieces I've watched.
Over Europe unleashed on a war, a trail of destruction. The power of Rome won't prevail. See the Catholics shiver and shake.
The Catholics feared and hated the Swedish king as the spawn of Satan himself. They portrayed his host as a horde of Laplanders riding reindeer into battle, or exotic Scottish barbarians, and Finlanders who possessed magical powers that could change the weather. Gustav did little to combat those rumors, and since he took over the imperial postal monopoly, he began distributing his own propaganda throughout the empire, stylizing himself as a savior and a just ruler with little imperial ambition. This, of course, shaped the legends about him even further. In reality, his short-term goals were rather mundane. He had to pay his giant new army, which was draining his finances. If the champion of Protestantism had to strong-arm his new Protestant friends for contributions or seize their territory for profit, so be it. His friendship had a price, and if cities did not want Swedish troops to show up for a surprise visit at their gates, they better pay their feudal dues to the man. In the long term, though, he wanted to be rid of the Catholic influence that threatened his northern empire. Rome was of no interest to him, nor the extinction of Catholicism or of the Holy Roman Empire. But he was still marching south. Oxenstierna urged caution. The march so far south was a huge risk for the overstretched Swedish army. Although they had plundered many rich cities along the way, it was their northern power base which was now pretty unprotected. Oxenstierna feared an endless war, one which Sweden seemed like it might have been dragged into. Gustav Adolf had given the Imperials a bloody nose, yeah, sure, but they were far from defeated. Even after 5 more major battles and a large number of smaller engagements, the war did not reach a conclusion. By 1632, Gustav Adolf's forces marched into the imperial homelands, advancing as far as Munich and laying siege to Nuremberg. But Gustav had made a strategic blunder. While they were busy in the south, the imperial general Wallenstein outmaneuvered the Swedes and marched north, raiding deep into the territory of Sweden's Saxon ally. This threatened to cut off the whole communications line and forced Gustav Adolf to race north after Wallenstein. It was already November, and his troops were pretty exhausted from the campaign, but he hoped that another Breitenfeld would get rid of imperial power in the north once and for all. With Gustav's host approaching, Wallenstein halted his troops near Lützen, a small town near Leipzig. The Imperials were initially fewer in number, under 17,000 men and 20 heavy guns strong. But they had chosen an advantageous spot between marshes and fortified Lützen. Gustav Adolf brought more than 19,000 men and 60 heavy guns with him and ordered the attack. The Swedish king was well known as a brilliant innovator of modern tactics and military techniques. Early on, he had studied military theory of Wallhausen and Malris, implementing the new ideas from the United Provinces. In a checkerboard formation, he moved his pike and shot brigades forward, flanked by the heavy Swedish cavalry. At first, it seemed like the Swedes were claiming another easy victory. The Imperial left wing gave way under the pressure of the Swedish heavy cavalry, and only the timely arrival of reinforcements saved Wallenstein from disaster. The town of Lützen was set on fire to stop the Swedes from taking it, but strong winds blew the heavy smoke right onto the battlefield. Soon, with all the smoke of the discharged guns as well, it became nearly impossible to see and direct the battle from afar, especially for the near-sighted Swedish king. It was a fierce and brutal battle, with both sides suffering heavy casualties and several units breaking and fleeing the field. In the center, the Swedish infantry threw itself repeatedly against the entrenched Imperial musketeers, paying a bloody price. So to rally and support his troops, Gustav Adolf and his bodyguards rode out onto the field. They joined the advance on the right wing, but with the smoke and the overall chaos of battle, Gustav soon got lost in the confusion. Suddenly, he was hit by a musket shot, crushing the bones in his left arm. Then his horse got hit in the neck, reeling out of control. Gustav's master of horse tried to lead his king away from the Imperial lines as they were rushed by a squadron of enemy horsemen. Pistols were fired at close range, and a chaotic melee ensued. A discharge burned the face of his protector, who lost his grip on the Swedish king. Gustav Adolf was hit by another ball and stabbed by a sword. He fell to the ground. Unaware of the king's fate, the battle raged on all afternoon. Once more, the Swedes renewed their attacks against Lützen, finally throwing the Imperials out. Wallenstein lost his nerve as his flanks buckled, ordering a general retreat. By the evening, as the battle subsided, the search for the Swedish king began. The search party spotted the king's riderless horse and began inspecting the dead bodies on the ground. After a long search, Gustav Adolf was finally found. Mutilated by several stab wounds and with a bullet wound in the temple, he lay there among the nameless dead. His armor and possessions had been looted from his lifeless corpse. The Swedes at first tried to hide their king's fate by putting his body in a wagon, but rumors soon circulated. Both sides had lost thousands of men in the Battle of Lützen, but although it was the Imperials who had quit the field first, the death of Gustavus Adolphus likely had the greatest impact on the course of the war. He had not just been the Swedish king. He was a living legend, the lion, the child of prophecy. Soldiers were proud to follow the rightful king in the north, just to be part of his legend. But now, who was to lead them? Did Sweden's imperial dreams and ambitions die with Gustav? Destiny, it seemed, had taken a different path than the prophecy had suggested.
It's that move to the south, right? Obviously, we're talking history, so it's not like I can sit there and go, "Oh, he should have done this, should have done that." That doesn't matter. But I think Indy said it best when they said that his initial thought was to remove that threat, right? In the Catholicism and the Catholics from being a threat to them and their land and such. And I get that part. But then it's that continued push south that I'm like, okay, what were you thinking? Was that... And y'all will know better than I. I mean, for a lot of you, this is your history. So I'd be curious if anybody's ever said why he continued south. I mean, Indy really didn't cover it other than, he was pushing more south. But not necessarily, why. I mean, things worked out the way they did on purpose. Right? I mean, things happen for a reason, but that's one of those things which we've seen across multiple wars, where it takes that one little extra thing that someone does that changes the course. of the entire thing. All right, let's get this one's. I mean, literally, I'm sitting here just totally enthralled because it's fascinating in the sense, you know, getting the crown at the age that he did, becoming the legend of, you know, with the partnership, and I won't try to pronounce his name, where, you know, he handled the bureaucracy of it, and the king really, that gave the king the freedom to start developing and you know, coming up to become what he became. But man, that push to the south. That's the only thing. I mean, even as Indy was talking about it, that's the thing I really question. Especially as they said, you know, leaving the north for all intents and purposes, you know, unoccupied in the sense of military reinforcements. Man. Let me know in the comments, because I'm curious to see if anybody's ever talked why that continued push south. That's the part that boggles me.
Well, Chris, it's great to have you here once again.
Oh, thank you. That's nice of you to have me.
As you know, most of you know, this is not, of course, Chris. This is, in fact, Joachim. Now, but with a lot of bands, now I know that when I was you know, especially when I was a teenager and stuff, I had favorite bands, and you had their albums, and you had pictures of them all. But sometimes you would get the wrong name assigned to the wrong person because maybe you know, you hadn't read a lot of, there was no internet and stuff. And
Yeah, and sometimes they messed it up in the booklet at the art design.
this is true. And so, you know, a couple of them, there's certain genres of music where you'll have like people who will all dress exactly the same, so they can be a little interchangeable. Now, I'm going to use this because you do actually have quite distinct look from the rest of actually most of you guys do. So, but you're the short-haired guy. You're the guy with like the creepy facial hair and stuff.
The creepy guy. What the?
With the reflective sunglasses, so in case there's porn showing on the monitors, everybody in the audience can see that. But you do have a distinctive look, so I don't think that would happen to you particularly often, especially because you're the lead singer. But that leads me to asking something. Do you ever get confused about like, say, lyrics between one song and another song and stuff when you're...
Yes, especially when it comes to this album, Carolus Rex,
Yeah.
and all the songs on it, because they're available in both Swedish and English.
True.
And that makes a huge difference, actually.
Okay.
I don't remember how many times. So like, yeah, this song, Lion from the North, I remember clearly. I can't remember if we were doing it in that night in Swedish or English. But let's say we sang it in English, and I ran off for the guitar solo.
Yeah.
And when I come back for the bridge part and clap along, and I'm starting to sing Swedish, and I change the language.
Yeah.
Everybody else is like, what the fuck?
Does the audience have a problem with that, do you think? Or are they just like, oh, okay.
No, most of the times, I mean, most people know that it's available in both languages.
Yeah.
So people are usually laughing about it. But it's happened like 4 or 5 times. And I also Carolus Rex, one of our most popular songs.
Yeah.
I've sung it, I don't know how many times in both languages. But sometimes I get afraid of getting it wrong that I black out. So I've actually had, you know, all embrace me, it's my Stockholm say, what?
Wow.
I didn't know where to go. So yeah, sometimes that only me being afraid of making that mistake will cause me to make mistakes.
What you could do what Uwe Törnqvist has to do. Since, okay, now you guys have written a lot of songs. He's 91 years old now, right? 'Cause he's a Swedish artist. He was big starting in the 50s. He was like the first rock star in Sweden in like 1954, 55. And he's 91 and he still tours. And I know that he does this because I played piano on his 90th birthday tour, which was really fun, playing for a bunch of 80-year-olds and stuff. But you know, I'm a little behind. So he's got a little monitor, and he has really bad vision. with gigantic letters of all of his texts coming up and stuff, because he's written something like 800 songs. And it's and a lot of these songs that we're doing were written in the 1950s or the early 1960s. And I don't mean just like of course he's going to remember all the words to the hits and stuff, but he really needs that. Now I think you've mentioned this before.
Yeah.
But I don't remember. I know when you play these songs from Carolus Rex in Sweden, you play them in Swedish.
Yes.
How often do you do the Swedish versions abroad?
It depends on the language capabilities on that country and what kind of language they're speaking there. We've noticed that, well, present company excluded, but Americans and British people are a bit handicapped when it comes to second and third language.
It's true. Yep.
That's very true.
Some of them are handicapped when it comes to first languages.
That
Insert
is-
drum roll.
Okay, there goes 5 patrons from America.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're
In
speaking
America
the
and
truth.
Britain, so they don't like the Swedish version.
No, exactly, because they're so used to everything being in English.
Yeah.
We did, on a couple of tours, we usually played one song in Swedish.
Okay.
We chose one and did that in Swedish, which is usually very appreciated, actually.
Okay.
But doing all of them in Swedish, we figured it worked only in Sweden, Finland, now not Finland, Norway, Denmark, and sometimes in Finland, depending on where in Finland you are.
All right, sure.
And other than that, places where they are generally very bad at English. So
But then it's okay.
Because then it's like,
not
yeah,
gonna understand anyway.
yeah.
Okay.
So
So Nevada. Well, why did I pick that place of all? They're not particularly bad at English in Nevada.
I wouldn't say so, no.
No, they're good at counting.
Oh yeah,
You see what I mean? Because of Vegas.
I see.
Yeah, I mean the hits never stop here at Sabaton Hits.
Andy, you're a dork.
All right, not Chris. Why don't you say goodbye to all those people in Nevada and not Nevada?
All right, everyone in Nevada and not Nevada. Thank you very much for watching. Hope we'll meet again very soon. Same time, same channel, same place. Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right, everyone, you know the drill. You click, 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 get some subscriptions, check out Indy's other channels, become a Patreon. That's it. Get the fuck out of here.
I missed that. Get the fuck out of here. So here's the thing for me that I really wish would have happened in that last segment is more history on the song. They kind of went off tangent with it, but that's okay. I mean, it's obviously their show. Because yeah, I really that push to that final push to the south is the one that boggles my mind as to why. If it was a sense that he felt that he needed to push them out further to the south as that one last push, I could probably understand that, and that may be the case. But otherwise, no, I don't. That final push, having already taken care of so much, is kind of that piece. Now, again, this is history, so you know what's done is done. But I'm really curious if that was the thinking. So please, in the comment section, let me know. Is that kind of what happened there, or has it been talked about, or anything? So, man, I really like this one. This is one of those histories that you know, I've watched so much history now. A lot of it, obviously, I want to go do Indy's channel. But this is one that's outside of kind of the World War I, World War II, that gets me fascinated about the person. Right? I mean, it's similar to like Soldier of Three Armies. that was one that I was so enamored, not necessarily with the what wars they were in, but more of just that person and what psychologically drove them. And that's what's fascinating me here about Gustavus is I understood the wanting to push to protect, you know, the culture and the people. But then at what point is that kind of enough that you could pause and say, okay, I've established this is my area. Is that last push, man? That's heartbreaking because what could have been, you know, and everything happens for a reason. So, you know, it's not worth going into what could have been, especially, you know, we're talking as far back as the 1600s. But man, to be that young, to be that powerful of a leader and growing into the role and truly embracing it and being that successful, that's really cool. I like that. All right, that's going to do it for this one. We'll see what comes up on the next one. Till then, y'all know who I am and what I'm about. I'm JTMM. I'm out.